Everyone, it's Emily Fox. Today's video is going to be a bunch of book reviews, but also a reading vlog slash challenge based on the New York Times. They recently came out with their 100 best books of the 21st century list. And I saw the number one and I approve. And I feel like sometimes these kind of lists, this one is based on critiques, novelists, they tend to lean more towards like literary fiction and less on what the average reader reads. So I wanted to see how my personal taste compared. I always like to compare, trying to find basically awards or book clubs that are close to my own reading taste. That way I can get more recommendations. And again, I read number one and I do think it's a really good book. So let's see how my personal taste compares. I'm going to give you a quick review of all of the books that I have read out of the 100. And then I will be picking up from my shelf all the books that I already own from that list, but I haven't read. And then I'll read a couple this week. So let's get to it. Also, they did come out with a different list based on readers' taste. So if you would like to see a part two, definitely let me know. So I'm going to go from number 100 to number one, just mentioning quickly reviews of the ones that I have read, the ones I think are worth picking up. Obviously, everyone's taste is going to be different, but hopefully my review helps you decide if that's going to be for you or not. The first one I have read is number 84, which is The Emperor of All ta-nehisi, which is a nonfiction about cancer. It's like a biography of cancer. I read this actually recently. It took me a while to get to it, but this was actually really good and surprisingly readable. I did flip-flop between the audiobook, which I feel like nonfiction can go really well as audiobook. And this is a popular one. I completely understand the hype. And if anything, I would love to see like a part two because this one was published a couple years ago. So I would love to see what improvement we've made because again, it's the history of cancer and it was really, really fascinating, surprising, really readable too. So that's definitely something that I approve. Definitely worth reading. I almost forgot Station 11 by Emily St. John Mandel. I am not surprised actually that out of all the like post-apocalyptic books that I've read, this would be the one that would be most loved by critiques because it's again more literally fiction. You're following this troop during the apocalypse. A disease killed most of humanity, and you're following this troupe that plays like Shakespeare plays as they're traveling throughout the US trying to entertain people. And there's like some back and forth between timelines of before as it's starting and then the troupe. And it was okay. I don't think her writing is for me personally, but it wasn't a bad book, so I'm not again surprised that it's on here. Number 80, we have The Story of the Lost Child, which is the last book in the Neapolitan series. And I just read this. I tried to stretch this series over 3 years because I love it so much and I didn't want it to end. And this is absolutely fantastic. A great ending. My only review when I was done was that I was devastated and I still am. I will never get over this. The author's fantastic at fleshing these characters. You're starting to follow these women when they're like 5 years old and you're following them until their 60s. Their friendship, complex friendship, the decisions that they make, how they grew up in this small neighborhood through violence and trying to escape it through education and by any means trying to not become like their mothers and the women that they see around them. And it's essentially about class, but you're following them over 60 years. And I loved it. Absolutely loved it. This is so worth it. Number 77, An American Marriage. I did read this one. This is more, again, literally fiction than what I usually go for. It's more like historical fiction, literally fiction. I did enjoy it. You're following a character who is a young Black man who is arrested on false accusations, and you're following their marriage over the years. And I thought it was okay. Like I said, it's not necessarily my main genre, but I did overall enjoy it. I don't think this one counts. Number 76, Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow. I am in the middle of this book. I have been in the middle of this book ever since it came out. It's part of what I call my pile of shame, basically the books I couldn't finish. Eventually I want to, but who knows when that will happen. From what I understand so far, it was these friends that are creating this video game, and it was okay. So probably why I haven't finished it. 69, The New Jim Crow. This was actually fantastic. It's another nonfiction. It's based on the mass incarceration in the US due to racism, and it's something that I did not grow up hearing. I'm from Canada, but like we don't necessarily learn much about racism or the prison system in school, like at all. So this was really, really interesting. Would absolutely recommend it. Number 61, we have Demon Copperhead. This one just came out. It's, again, historical fiction, literally fiction a little bit. You follow a main character who was born to a woman who has substance abuse, and it's incredibly difficult childhood. You're following him trying to survive the foster system, just the violence of it, addictions. And I overall enjoyed it. I found it quite long. And again, it's not my main genre, so like keep that in mind. But I overall enjoyed it, but I did find it pretty long. I wasn't super satisfied with the ending, and the romance wasn't really that great in my opinion. But I feel like it's the newest popular one, so I can understand why it's here. But at the same time, this is supposed to be like the 21st century, the best books. And I don't think, I mean, most of these books are probably not going to be the same taste. Again, it's the critiques. So we have different tastes in general, but it was good, just good. Number 51, we have Life After Life, which I'm actually surprised that it's there. I did enjoy this book. It's a mix of historical fiction slash a little sci-fi. I went through a phase where I read every book I could find with someone reliving their lives over and over again, or their day. It was just a little phase, and I really enjoyed them. And this was not my favorite, but once again, it's like more historical fiction than what I usually go for, and it's World War II, and I feel like I've read World War II books for a lifetime. But this was enjoyable. Again, you're following this woman who keep reliving her life, and at first, like, she's dying really quickly because it's not funny, but like diseases and stuff. So she's just trying to make different decisions to get, you know, further, and then it becomes World War II. She's born, I think it's like 05 or something. So like she goes through the 20th centuries a couple times. So yeah, not a bad book. Not my favorite one with that trope, but again, it seems to be leaning more towards literary fiction and historical fiction than the ones I personally enjoy. Number 46, The Goldfinch by Donna Tartt, really? I don't know if the book, The Secret History, is going to be on the list. I just quickly looked at the list. But between the two, the other one is so much better, I feel like. I've been joking around that this is just about a couple of snobby people in New York. You're following different like timelines and stuff, and it's complicated for no reason. And then there's just a lot of drugs. That's mostly what I remember. What it was sold to me as was this young main character who is there in this museum when there's something that happens, and he ends up stealing this painting, The Goldfinch. And I thought it was going to be more about that, and it's barely part of the story, I felt like. So I was really bored personally, but you know, if the critiques say it's good, maybe you'll agree. Number 44, that was a pleasant surprise. The 5th season, N.K. Jemisin. This is, I think, one of the only fantasy that is on there. And it's almost like a fantasy sci-fi mix too. And I really enjoyed this series. I actually just recently did a video about my like top 5-ish best fantasy series that I've read completely, and this was in there because this is so good. It's a little complicated, so I feel like, again, literally fiction readers, if you want to get into fantasy, I feel like you might enjoy this one more because it's more focused on the prose than the average fantasy book. And even though I feel like no one mentions it, this is a revenge story. It's like a female rage kind of story. This woman who lives in this world where people with magical powers have to hide it, has spent her whole life hiding it. She got married, she had kids, and then her son, one day when she's out of the home, uses his powers, so her husband kills him and then kidnaps their daughter and runs away. So she spends the whole time trying to get her back while trying to hide again her magical powers, because in that world, whenever you're found, you're either killed or kidnapped and brought to this magical school. And I feel like we tend to associate magical schools with like positive stuff, but like it's not in that world. And I really enjoyed it. It's definitely more complex. The writing style, a lot of the point of view is told in second person. So you, it can be a little confusing, but eventually things end up making sense towards the end. And I thought it was fantastic. So I'm pleasantly surprised that the critiques agree with that one. Number 41, Small Things Like These. I actually like this book. I don't think I've ever even really mentioned that I've read this, and it's a really short book, kind of historical fiction also. And it's based in Ireland, and you're following this small town, this woman who gets pregnant, and obviously the gossips and everything that goes around to that in that small town, and like religion. So even though, again, it's not my main genre, I did enjoy this one and understand the hype. As I'm scrolling, I'm seeing some that I know I own, so I'm looking forward to trying them this week, but let's focus. Number 15, we have Pachinko, which again, historical fiction kind of story. Did you watch the TV show? Is it worth? I've only seen the first episode, and to me, this one was good, but kind of forgettable. I feel like some of these, actually, I'm noticing a pattern. They just don't tend to have a huge impact on me personally. I hadn't read any book with the Korean versus Chinese war, and I knew some of the horror, but like reading the book about it was definitely horrifying. So if you want to try. And then the number 1, which is the reason I wanted to go through this list with you, is My Brilliant Friend, which is the first book in that series, the Neapolitan series that I was mentioning, the two women, the friendship over their lives. And this is just such a fantastic story. I feel like it deserves more hype. I know it was popular in Europe because it's an Italian translation, and it needs to be more popular on our side of the world because it's definitely worth picking up. I'm obsessed with this. I will be rereading it, and because you're following them throughout their whole lives, I feel like rereading it at different age will probably completely change my feelings, but watching them make some good and some poor decisions. And like not just them, but also everyone from that neighborhood, and just seeing how their stories are linked forever and their decisions affect everyone. And I love this. It's just so good. So I will be putting on the screen the amount of books that I have read from this list. I feel like it's more than I expected, but I don't feel like it's necessarily a list of my all-time favorite books. So I don't know if it will be super close to my own personal taste if I pick more books, but we're going to test that this week. So I'm going to go through my bookcases and pick up all the books that I own and I haven't read from the list. Okay, so this is what my bookshelves look like. Ignore the setup. I haven't organized this side yet, but we have to find Never Let Me Go, which should be on here. There you go. There it is. I even have the same cover. There you go. More sci-fi. We need to find the road, which I know I own this one. I don't know where it is. The cats have been redecorating, as you can see, so little librarians are kind of messy. Oops. There it is. Atonement. I actually wanted to read that this month, so it might be the time for that. There it is. Our first nonfiction, Between the World and Me. Now, Middlesex should be on this bookcase somewhere. There it is. Voila. From my last book haul, so perfect timing. So from that list, there are 6 books that I already own and I haven't read. So I think I have time to probably read maybe 2, 3 this week. So let's try it. Actually, let me see. I did really, really want to read more by Elena Ferrante because I said I loved that first series that I've read by her. So The Days of Abandonment might be something I need to pick up. It would be nice to read a nonfiction. I haven't been very good at it this year, I should say. So Between the Worlds and Me, all I remember is that this is like a letter from like a father to his son. So we'll see. Middlesex, I kind of want to read this. For some reason, I thought this was a classic, but turns out it's like maybe a modern classic. It's the thickest one of the list, so I don't know. Atonement is definitely something that I really, really wanted to read. So probably The Road. I attempted to read this. I've seen the movie too. And the writing style was a lot, to be honest. So again, not surprising that this would be the one that is picked by the critiques. So there's that. And then Never Let Me Go, which I've excellently seen the movie. I didn't know it was a book. I think I remember the story a little too much. So I don't know. I think these 3 less of a chance, and I think this is going to be my TBR for the week. So I'll keep you updated, but I think I'm going to try this one first because I'm hoping she's going to be a favorite author. Let's see. Update number 1. Let me tell you, this is not what I expected. This is actually our book club pick for Patreon, so I'll go into more details on there, but let me tell you, this was nothing like I expected. It's nothing like so like, if you hate this, please still give the other one a shot. And I didn't hate this. I think it's just very, like, the right word in English. Like, I almost want to say, like, repulsive, but, like, it's on purpose. It's on purpose. I knew that this was about a woman who is going through, like, a divorce, and I had just bought, like, a couple of her books. Where did I put them? A couple of her books in my last book haul because I really wanted to read more by her because, again, I love her other series so much. And I was not prepared. I thought this was going to be, like, more of a, almost, like, literally eat, pre-love. No. You see the crash and burn instead. And the author was excellent at this. But, again, it feels almost like yucky. This is definitely not my best vocabulary, but at first you're following her husband is basically telling her he wants, nothing to do with her, like leaves, and she can kind of see that he's probably cheating on her. And to be fair, I feel like when I'm reading this kind of book, I feel like I'm her best friend. And frankly, I would have told her not to stay in this marriage a long time ago from what, she's saying. But then she goes through phases of, again, losing it more and more. And again, the author does that very well. But she's definitely losing it. To be fair, again, it's voluntary. And there are also some really interesting social commentary of, like, women, like, your whole life, especially this is set in the 70s, I believe. I don't remember if there's a specific date that is mentioned, but it's not like women had as much of a choice as they do now. So I feel like whenever you get into this relationship, you get into this marriage, it consumes your whole life. And they have children too, 2 children and a dog. And she's left dealing with all of this while he is out, living his fresh new life and, feeling all great. And you know the whole stereotype that women crash and burn at first at a breakup and then men's the opposite. It's only a couple months later, whenever the woman is fine, that they are finally realizing the effects of their choices. Obviously, it's not always the case, but it's definitely the case in here, I feel like. So it was interesting, but I can't say I enjoyed it. Do you need to give a book 5 star to get something out of it? Absolutely not. Again, very talented, but almost a little too good at making me feel about the whole thing. So I'm going to give myself a few days to fully digest it because it's definitely one of those books, but I'm glad I read it, I think. There are definitely some difficult scenes in here, and if you are sensitive about certain topics, I would look up some triggers because I don't think I can forgive the author nor the main character about one specific scene. So probably two, actually two. There's one that horrifying as an animal lover, and two, just there's a spicy scene that I wish I could erase. I wish. So on that note, I actually have already started this one. I'm going to wait until I'm done to review it, and then we're going to start. I'm excited. I feel like I thought this was a classic. Again, confession. I'm not super familiar with English classics, or I'm getting better, but I have a minor in French literature. So, but I thought this was more classic, and it was published in 2001. So, to be fair, does it not give you vibes of like classics? And I've only seen like little clips of the movie, so I have no spoilers, which I'm really happy about that. And I just found out that this is World War II, I think. So I did say I was never going to read another World War II stories because I'm so tired of them. To be fair, like, of course it's going to be sad. It's World War II, incredibly sad events. But I feel like it's too often, a money grab. Like, I've read some really awful ones, like The Tattooist of Auschwitz. Ew, that was not only extremely badly written, but like it felt, ugh. Anyway, I've been tricked, so I will be reading another one right now, and I'm hoping I'm going to like it, and then I'll watch the movie, I think. So far it's good. We'll see. Okay, update number 2. I finished my second book of the week, so Between the World and Me. This one is definitely like nonfiction memoir, which it's so hard to rate these books. I hate doing it because like who am I to judge, like give a number to your life? Like obviously I'm trying to focus on the storytelling, the writing and everything, but still. I don't think I rated, by the way, the last book. So this one is probably going to be like a 3 something. And this one is definitely the best book between the two, probably 4.25. Again, don't really like rating these, but it's, yes, a letter to his son, his 15-year-old son, and he's talking about essentially his whole life and how it still feels to be born into a Black body in the US. So his childhood and then going to university, becoming an adult, marrying, having him as a child, and how it has influenced his life, this whole trauma he's been through. And it's very interesting. I do think the author is quite quotable. I'll probably try and put some of the best ones that I've read, the ones that, influenced me more, touched me more on the screen so you can read them, pause and read. And obviously we've had very different life, did not grow up the same way. So it's very interesting to see the way he personally perceived. At one point he compares living, the streets, compares like the streets versus school and how they're both part of the same system. And I feel like growing up, I always loved school, never perceived it exactly the same, but obviously I'm not, never have been a Black boy. But there you go. The post-it kind of fell. So I came to see the streets and the school as arms of the same beast. One enjoyed the official power of the state, while the other enjoyed its implicit sanction. But fear and violence were the weaponry of both. Fell in the street and the crews would catch you slipping and take your body. Fell in the schools and you would be suspended and sent back to the same streets where they would also take your body. I feel like I'm doing a poor job at describing it, but I definitely really enjoyed this. I completely understand why it is mentioned on this list and it's popular. It had been on my shelf for way too long. So I'm glad I got finally around to reading it. So I don't know how his son felt about it. Obviously, it feels like it's definitely for his son, but you will definitely get something out of it too. So enjoyed this. Again, probably like 4.25. And I'm almost done with Atonement. I have about like 100 pages left-ish, but we'll see how it ends. Quick ending to this vlog. I have finished book number 3 and I did enjoy it. Actually, more than I expected. I've been joking that, I've been tricked again into reading another World War II story. I feel like they've just become so repetitive, and like when you read a couple bad ones in a row, you just don't feel like reading them anymore. But this was good. I even enjoyed the portion where you're following the main character as a soldier. So like it was my least favorite portion, but still, I feel like seeing it like first point of view is not something I've read that many times. And I feel like it's about, you know, the soldier and then the romance at home, the drama, and not so much about the concentration camps, which I feel like, again, that's what I kept reading over and over again. So, story wise, if you don't know, you have this family a bit more rich. They have two daughters, and then the woman that works for them, her husband runs away, and then she has a son, and they are raised as friends, basically. And since forever, they're not super close, but then there's a little bit of a budding romance that happens, and then the sister sees things, and then she perceives things a certain way, and then falsely accuses him of a crime, and then he gets imprisoned. Hopefully, you can't hear Claudia yelling in the background. And he gets to prison and then sent to war, and then, you know, they don't get to see each other for a while, blah, 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 and then drama happens. I definitely felt like it had classic vibes in terms of like the beginning portion, but then at the end, there's like a prologue, I guess, epilogue, I should say, in 1999. So it felt really confusing because again, I kept thinking it was a classic, even though portion about World War II, and the ending kind of surprised me in a good way. I appreciated that the author went into that direction. Obviously, I don't want to spoil anything, but I was pleasantly surprised. I think this is going to be another 4-star. So, surprisingly higher ratings than I expected from the list, because when I was going through it in the beginning of the video, I felt like it seems to be a lot of books that aren't really my cup of tea. Like, I can see that some of them do have hype, but they tend to lean towards genres that are not my main genres, and that even though I read a couple of them, they're not always favorites. I feel like I've read 2 that I really enjoyed that I'm glad I finally picked up, and one that surprisingly didn't care for. I feel like even 3 stars generous for the Days of Abandonment, which really sucks because I really loved my other series by the author. I still have 2 other books by her that I want to try, so like it's not the end of the world. And it's just that you have to enjoy reading about a woman who is losing her mind. And I feel like I've read another one that was a little bit like that, although that one was a bit more like magical realism too. That one, I don't remember the title, but it's a little bit in that same line. So like, you know, goes through a divorce and the crash and burn portion before eventually coming out of it. And it's just my expectations were so different. So that could be partially the reason. So overall, not a bad thing. I feel like I had a pretty good week reading. Do I think this list is for me? No. I don't think so. I do like going through these kind of lists. I will link down below a playlist of them. Some book clubs and like awards I feel like are closer to my personal taste. So I would rather take my recommendations from them than the critiques, because unfortunately our tastes are not. I feel like sometimes you wonder, are those really the books you enjoy reading? So like I mentioned also the intro, there is a version that was recently published as a response from readers. So if you would like to see a part 2, definitely let me know and I'll do that. But I think 2 good books out of 3. I'm happy. I'm happy. So I hope you enjoyed this video. Thumbs up, subscribe. I'll put some of the videos that I was mentioning on the screen. Definitely check those out and I'll see you in my next one. Bye.